Ladies and gentlemen, now a few months ago in the Champion Updates roadmap, Kabam talked about plans to aggressively scale up the pace that they're buffing up champions, and we're already starting to see it in the game. Last month we had a double buff to Magneto, this month we had a huge tune up to Punisher 2099. It could be a little bit better, but it still makes him like much better than he was previously, and also a very small buff to Mystic Ghost Rider as well to give him Incinerate immunity, and toward the start of the next month, so in a couple of weeks time, we are going to see the reworks for both Falcon and also Gambit as well. So the buffs are really scaling up, but we don't know like what's coming after that. And if they can commit to buffing 2 characters every single month in the next a year and a bit throughout a year time period, that's 24 characters buffed. And if you've been playing Marvel Contest of Champions a very long time like myself, you'll know it's like, you know, a good year for champion buffs when like about 4 or 5 characters get a good buff, and they're aiming to go for 24 champions every single year, which is very exciting for the year moving forward. So in today's video, I want to talk about 15 champions that I really like to see buffed in the next year, characters that I feel are just so much fun to play, have so much potential in terms of their animations and play style that's just really being underutilized at the moment. Now, before I start waffling on today, head over to the comments section and let me know who you would like to see buffed and what kind of cool mechanics you'd like added to that character. And if you see like any really cool ideas, be sure to upvote them by smashing that like button. So yeah, that gives hopefully Kabam, if they stumble across this video, an idea of what characters the community wants to see buffed most, and maybe some cool inspiration for mechanics that they could add to various characters. So yeah, let's get a pretty good discussion going today, hopefully. But anyway, to start off my list, first up is the runner-up of the Hulkbuster buff poll, Netflix Daredevil. Now, Daredevil on Netflix was an absolute masterpiece, man. And I just want to see Daredevil be made into a savage character that's so much fun to play, has good counter to evade and miss mechanics. He already does in certain scenarios when it comes to miss, but also a good evade counter I think would match him really well when it comes to a skill character. I'd also love to see him have something like Red Guardian's Trauma that's much easier to maintain and also stack up as well. So that is a debuff that deals like additional physical damage based on the damage that you deal, and it's really, really nice once you get it going on Red Guardian, and I think it would just be perfect for Netflix Daredevil and also the theme of the character. Also, I'd love to see him have some sort of way to be either like immune to or remove or be resistant to debuffs applied to him. Being a skill character, you know, he has to compete with characters like Aegon and Nick Fury and Elsa Bloodstone, and just have like some halfway utility or something really, really solid that allows him to be viable and interesting versus like all sorts of annoying science champions that have a lot of different debuffs as well. But yeah, I really like Netflix Daredevil, man. He's super, super fun to play, but he also does need a fairly significant increase to his overall damage output that may come in the form of increased armor breaks and increased fury as well. But I do like the stuns on this guy. I do love his block. I wish the Netflix version also had a higher chance to reliably evade special attacks as well, because he's only got like a, 15% chance on projectiles, and it'd be nice if he was also bumped up to 100% evade on projectiles, very similar to the classic version of Daredevil. Maybe that could be linked into Sig ability, but it would be nice just to have it on the base even unawakened. But yeah, Netflix Daredevil, man, I'd love to see a massive buff for. Also, one character as well that I find really, really fun to play, but just has like no real source when it comes to offense, is the Civil War version of Black Panther. So I think I've skimmed over him here, but if we open him up in the roster, I think there's some really cool stuff that they could do with the core of like how Black Panther functions as a character. So he's got like vibranium armor, and he stores up all of the damage taken and then reflects that, but the problem is that this isn't very useful on offense. So what I'd probably do is give him kind of like a magic style limbo, but also a cheat death while he's reflecting damage. So let's say you get 5 parries, you get 5 stacks of armor, and then you can dash back and enter your reflective state for let's say 7 seconds, and in that state you can't die, and then at the end of it you reflect all of the damage and heal it all back up, but then maybe after that you burst out with like a massive 200% fury, and on the base of the character maybe he's got some armor breaks, some bleeds as well, so the rotation really becomes that rinse and repeat of, you know, you get the 5 armors up, you go for a reflective state, you like get battered for a few seconds, and then you reflect this massive chunk of damage, and then come out of that with like massive fury energy, massive bleed, massive armor break, and just still loads of burst damage. I think there's some really fun stuff that they could do with like a Black Panther Civil War rework, but also the classic Black Panther. I think there are some cool ways that they could buff his numbers up as well. But yeah, 2 Black Panther buffs, man, I would love to see at some point in the next year. But also one character that everybody's been screaming to get buffed, and I completely agree here as well, is Miles Morales, man. I am the lucky owner of a 6-star awakened signature 60 Miles Morales, so I would love this buff. This would be such a phenomenal time. But yeah, he just doesn't really like do anything or have anything special when you're playing this character on offense, so he needs like a complete rework to think about, like you know, how they want to do this champion. Maybe some shock damage, maybe with some ability to counter or reverse healing. There's lots of stuff that's very common in the science class that they could weave into this character, and also adding in shock damage and maybe energy damage mechanics can make him feel a little bit unique as well. But they really do need to do like a full rework of Miles, go back to the drawing board and think about some really cool stuff that they can add into him. But if they could release this rework, I think this is probably very ambitious for the release of the PS4 game, but I really, really hope the next like rework they're going to announce for hopefully the start of December or early January is a full Miles rework, man. That'd be absolutely amazing, because especially with the rising fame of Miles after Spider-Verse and PS4, I think it's going to be a big pull-in for a lot of players if there's like a super jacked up version of Miles in this game, man. That'd be so, so cool. So yeah, I'd love to see Miles get buffed, but also one character that was slaughtered in patch 12.0. All the lads know where we're going here, boys. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange used to be amazing. He was one of my first 4-star characters ever on this account. And he's really one of the characters that made me fall in love with Marvel Contest of Champions, because his animations are so fun, his playstyle was so interesting. I loved his regeneration and just ability to constantly strip buffs off the opponent. But he is just such a noodle, man, after the 12.0 nerf. And they've kind of added in like fractions of his power via loads of different synergies. But Doctor Strange, they just need to go back to the drawing board and make him very interesting for power control. I think his signature ability to strip buffs is probably still one of the strongest nullifies in the entire game, but they really just need to ramp up the numbers and make this character a lot more interesting to play damage wise, and kind of restore a little bit of that power control and a little bit of that healing back and bump up those numbers a fair bit. Like, I swear if they spent like a couple of weeks on Doctor Strange, he could be back to being a very interesting top level character and just a great part of the Mystic class. And yeah, there are so many champions that are so much more powerful than Doctor Strange nowadays, so he needs a massive tune up, at least in my opinion. But I would love to see it at some point in the future as well. And then next up, we've got one of the biggest dud releases in the history of the game, a character that just flopped you know, beyond ridiculously hard. We've got the Noodle King himself, Red Skull. And Red Skull, he looks amazing, man. The animations for this guy are so cool as well. He's just a massive noodle. He's got like some alright utility in terms of the armor ups that he has to counter Havoc, but the damage output is so incredibly underwhelming. He needs a more consistent ability to block out what is it? Healing. The heal block on the heavy attacks, if the opponent is stunned, lasts for 7.5 seconds, which is such a short duration there when you've got heal blocks from all sorts of other tech characters lasting like a bare minimum of 20 seconds. I think there are synergies to increase this duration a little bit as well, but he just needs like a lot more damage output and a little bit more power control as well. Would be very, very nice to see from Red Skull, but also like some exciting new abilities on him. Like, I love his animations, but yeah, he's just so underwhelming to play whenever I've picked up this character. So yeah, Red Skull buff and revamp would be very, very nice there. Number 6 on this list, so I've got probably the most disappointing champion of last year, Ebony Maw, and they tried to buff this guy. All the Ebony Maw buff did was make him like so much more annoying to fight, because it just increased the fun and interactive damage off the degeneration. So it was like the worst buff in the history of the game, because Ebony Maw just didn't really get better, but he became like 3 to 4 times more annoying to fight in any like high attack node scenario, especially in Alliance War, man. It really, really sucks. So yeah, I'd like to see a proper Ebony Maw buff and scale up the numbers. Think about how this character works in you know, shorter to medium fights to make him a good character, and also in longer fights to make him a good character as well, because there are just so many flaws with, you know, once you got him fully ramped up, you can't access the Vulture anymore, and before you got him fully ramped up, he's just like the biggest noodle out there. So yeah, Ebony Maw is just such a dud, man. They need to go back, they need to like properly look at this character, because his animations are top tier. This character, he plays amazingly. It's just like, there are no numbers, man. It's so disappointing. So I'd love to see like a full Ebony Maw revamp, or at least a significant tune-up of the damage numbers at some point as well. And then next up, this is a character 100% they need to go back to the drawing board on, but Juggernaut, man. Juggernaut could be such a cool character if they focus on kind of the unstoppable, unblockable elements of him. Maybe there's some sort of, you know, rotational playstyle that they can add in with like Power Lock, where you can lock out the opponent in the corner. Again, being a Mystic champion fits him really, really well. And maybe like spam heavy attacks similar to, a Hulkbuster once you like gain a certain amount of unstoppable buffs, and maybe you gain those via like, you know, throwing special attacks or performing a certain amount of hits. But yeah, there's just so much cool stuff that they could do with Juggernaut to add in more Mystic utility, power control, power lock, improve the way that you fire off his heavy attacks to make his nullify and buff control more consistent as well. But yeah, I'd love to see a complete rework of Juggernaut, man. I think there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that they could do, and maybe add in like a bit of regeneration or a clever way to mitigate even more damage as well. It's like a little bit of a bonus there. Now, next up, we've got one of the most underwhelming OG characters, the King of Noodles, Original Gru, and he's just such a disappointing champion. Like, everybody loves Gru. He's one of the fan favorites, but in this game, his damage is just ridiculously low. He's got bleed immunity. He does have a little bit of regeneration off the special too, and also reduces debuff duration on himself by a fair bit, but really, it is the numbers that make Gru close to unplayable and just so tedious to play in so many different scenarios. So yeah, I'd just love to see like a massive rework of Gru. All of the buffs get you know, significantly increased in terms of their effectiveness. Maybe like a little bit more utility on this land as well. I don't think he has the ability to apply an armor break, so that would be really, really good to add for a Cosmic Champion there as well. But buffs and armor breaks are kind of the core of most Cosmic Champions, but you know, he's got like the bleed, the regeneration. He's not like terrible base utility, but it is just like the numbers that make him just so close to unplayable in the majority of scenarios. So yeah, I'd love to see like a massive tune-up for Gru. Now, while we are on the topic of Guardians of the Galaxy characters, I would love to see a rework of Rocket Raccoon and just the numbers really be significantly buffed up. This guy was also hit pretty hard in patch 12.0, but because of like higher power levels and more damage output from newer characters, he really has just sunk to the bottom of a lot of lists because he doesn't really have any utility. But Rocket Raccoon should just be a mega heavy damage output character, but also I think the Guardians of the Galaxy, none of the characters are really overpowered, so it'd be nice to see him be like the Apocalypse for the Guardians of the Galaxy, and maybe have like a special synergy or pre-fight ability that gives them additional tech, additional weapons. You know, that really is his functionality within the team. So yeah, I love that, man. If he's a hard-hitting character that gave all the Guardians additional bonuses, I think that'd be a really, really cool way to buff up Rocket Raccoon. So yeah, I would love to see that in the future. Now, from the first time I played him, I've always loved Yondu's animations. I love the incorporation of the Yaka arrow into the combo, and his Special 1, Special 2, and even Special 3, they feel amazing to fire off. Yondu playstyle is one of the most satisfying characters to play in the entire game. He just feels amazing. However, this character has just become very, very outdated. He needs a lot more utility and a lot more damage output to kind of keep up in the tech class. So Yondu, man, I dream of a day where we can have a god tier, just crazy Yondu tearing everything apart. And I think for his what is it, power level as well, especially in the MCU, he's crazy in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I just love to see him like super jacked up. So yeah, god tier Yondu, man, please make it happen. Next up, another character I've always loved the animations for. The look, the animations, the glider on Green Goblin, all of these are amazing. His Special 2 feels really fun to fire off as well, but the utility has always been very underwhelming and inconsistent when it comes to Green Goblin, and the damage output is just very lackluster as well. well. Like, this character just needs a massive tune-up in all of his abilities, and also, ideally, I think as a tech character, he needs a more reliable way to block out and mitigate healing. If he had like a lot more debuffs, so either Pumpkin Bomb, that could also scale up his damage a bit more, but also having another way to block out healing would be very, very nice for the champion as well. But yeah, the tech class is full of high utility champions that do hit quite hard toward the top. So they're going to have to do a pretty significant update to Green Goblin to make him a much more interesting champion. But he's a character that I would love to see a decent overhaul of. Now, another character I've always had a bit of a soft spot for is Vulture. I think he's got some really good power control. It's not the best in the game, but it's really satisfying in the right scenario where you can take advantage of it with the Raptor strikes. He arguably needs a few synergies to really get going and be an exciting character, and I think his damage output and also kind of lack of general utility outside of the power control have been stuff that has always weighed him down, comparatively speaking. So I like Vulture, man, but he just needs like a little bit more utility, a little bit more of a tune-up in terms of those damage numbers, and also for his debuffs off the special 1, and particularly special 2 as well, to be significantly enhanced in terms of the duration. I think if they increase the duration from the special 2 debuff from 10 seconds to about 25-30 seconds, this would actually be a huge buff for Vulture, because attacking into the opponent like burns power and also deals a little bit of damage. So while you've got this debuff active, he's actually really good to smash into the opponent, because yeah, there's a good amount of power control, power burn, but also loads of additional damage output as well. So yeah, with like a few changes, I think they could make Vulture just so much of a better champion comparatively speaking, but I'd love to see him get upgraded at some point. Next up, we got a champion that I swear like everybody's forgotten is in this game for the last 3 years. Back in like 2016, this guy was like maximum hype. You got double immunities, regeneration, and a little bit of damage output, and that's all you needed. But by today's standards, man, Ultron is a bit of an outdated character damage-wise and also utility-wise. There are just a lot of tech characters that bring a lot more to the table. So I'd love to see Ultron get like a little bit more utility, but maybe the focus of his update, hopefully if they decide to do it, is on significantly increasing the damage output. I think having stuff like Incinerate now would be perfect for the character. Maybe additional immunity to Incinerate would be very, very nice as well. But yeah, it'd just be amazing if like via that special 1 beam, you had like a massive Incinerate that could be enhanced by the bleeds that you deal, and maybe the bleeds were like scaled up even more from the basic attacks in terms of both chance and also potency. But I think there's a lot of cool stuff that they can do with Ultron to really significantly enhance his damage output. So I'd love to see this guy get buffed at some point in the future. Now, next up we have Iron Fist, and I think they could do a lot of cool stuff with Iron Fist. Maybe like throughout the fight he gains some sort of resource, maybe it's chi, and then maybe once you get to like 10 stacks of chi, then you can just go crazy god mode, very similar to like Human Torch's Nova Flame, for example, and get like a massive like double damage booster or something like that. But also on top of that, I'd love to see Iron Fist get a bit more of a consistent nullify on his heavy attack, because it only removes like certain types of buff at the moment, and it only removes 1 of each. So yeah, it's not very useful in the majority of scenarios, so a more consistent nullifier would be amazing. The armor breaks maybe scaled up a bit more would be very, very nice as well. And yeah, maybe a little bit of power steal or power control in some way, shape or form. Maybe when he enters like super god mode. But yeah, I'm not really too sure exactly how I would personally rework Iron Fist. But he's a character that I would love to see redone. Now, Sentry is a character, I've always loved his animations. His floating combo feels amazing to fire off, and also a special 1 feels really, really good as well. But I just hate the design of this champion. He's got a very inflexible play style, and also, he just like, even with full team synergy, he's got some decent damage. It's not even like, whoa, crazy, insane damage. It's just like, alright damage if you build a full team synergy around him. Even in the best case scenario, he's easily trumped by about 50 to 70 other characters in this game right now. He's just become really, really underwhelming as time passed, and he's got like no base utility to make him a solid, viable, interesting science champion for a lot of the deeper endgame content. So I just personally like to see A full revamp of Sentry, man. That'd be really, really good. This guy came out at the same time as Void, and in comparison, he's just so underwhelming. You can actually, like, I think block out healing with the Void synergy on Sentry, but if you have the choice between, you know, ranking up and investing in Void or Sentry, you 100,000,000% you go for the Void. Void is just so much better. So yeah, I'd love to see them, like, go back to the drawing board on Sentry, because I've really never liked his rotation, man. I find it like very forced, very inflexible when you need to counter like certain nodes or scenarios. So yeah, I just really don't like Sentry's playstyle, man, and I'd love to see a full revamp. Now, the final bonus character I'd love to see a massive rework, and this would probably have to come as well with some sort of like Thanos Cavalier Crystal, or maybe the introduction eventually of the 5-star Thanos into the featured pool to make him more accessible to players. So this would have to be like a double thing, but again, if they buff Thanos and then sold a load of Cavalier Crystals, man, you know, Kabam could be making bank. And Kabam, they love money, guys. We know this. This is a fact. But also, I'd love an endgame version of Thanos, like with a helicopter glaive, man. That'd be so cool. Like, I still feel like they missed a massive opportunity not adding in a endgame version of Thanos. Like, I was very confused by that, because Kabam, they love money. We all know they love money. And what would make more money than endgame Thanos just tearing everything apart? Nothing, man. I can't think of a single champion, apart from Stormbreaker Thor, or maybe Worthy Cap, that would sell more than endgame Thanos crystals. But worst case scenario, man, I just love to see like a massive rework to make like OG Thanos like crazy god tier, if there's never going to be an endgame Thanos in the game. But yeah, obviously it would need to come with more availability of the champion, because he's super rare at the moment and a very hard to get trophy character. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on champions that you would like to see buffed in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy today's video and breakdown, please do smash that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. But aside from that, thank you all very much for watching. Take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.